Welcome to episode 16 of the SWNZ Podcast, the podcast for New Zealand Star Wars fans. My name is Matt.
And my name is Christy.
We're on the eve of the release of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So we are going to predominantly be focusing on that in our discussions tonight, I think. We're recording this on Tuesday night, New Zealand time. The Rise of Skywalker technically comes out at 12:01 on Thursday, but of course you'll all be heading out to watch the midnight screening for that tomorrow night, Wednesday night. This is a big deal. This is the final film in the Star Wars saga. There's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up. There's a lot of anticipation about where various plot threads are going to go. And personally, I'm going to be going into the film without expectations, but I'm extremely curious to see where the story is going to take us and how it's going to be presented on the screen.
It's been a while since Star Wars fans have been going into a film like this at the end of a trilogy without a really clear idea about where the path was going to. I mean, most of us will remember the hype around Revenge of the Sith Episode 3 back in 2005, but knowing where the storyline with Anakin Darth Vader goes to, we kind of had a pretty basic idea about what was going to happen. Either the twins were going to show up somehow, Anakin was going to go to the dark side, there was going to be a fight of some sort. The minor details weren't there, but we knew the big picture. So it was really super exciting, but not to the sort of a sense of unknown that The Rise of Skywalker has been instilling with the way that they're teasing us with certain elements, but then obviously the big storyline has been sort of kept very under wraps. And I think a lot of fans are going to want to go into this clean. We know a fair few people are like not even watching some of the trailers because they want just that absolute shock and surprise and just want to be able to enjoy it without any preconceptions about what they want the story to be.
Yeah. I mean, the trailers have they've felt like they've been coming thick and fast recently, but when you break it down, I don't think they've actually given away that much information. They're pretty skeletal in what they've teased, and there's a lot of different ways those pieces can be assembled together, and I'm sure there's probably an element of misdirection there. We've encountered that more than once in the last few years. But it is a big deal, and yeah, it is a funny sort of scenario. A little while back, I was kind of thinking this is episode 9. It's the conclusion of the sequel trilogy, and it is in fact the conclusion of the Skywalker saga. A little while ago, that didn't really hit me, but I think just in the last couple of weeks, it really is. There's been a bit of an emphasis on the fact that this is tying up the whole Skywalker saga, the trilogy of trilogies that started in 1977, and personally, I'm really finding that having quite a lot of impact, and it's really starting to, the last few days it's really been starting to hit me, and I guess that's really going to hit us tomorrow night.
There was a particular moment in one of the last major trailers where C-3PO says the line, taking one last look at my friends, and I found myself getting quite emotional by that when you sort of stop and think that this is the last time that we will see these characters on screen, that it is a conclusion. We're not going to see the story in quite the same way. Sure, we'll get TV series and movies and possible trilogies down the line, but there's something about this that just has such a finality to it. Yeah. We've
experienced conclusions to trilogies before, but this one, I think it's tasked with the unenviable job of not only having to tie up the sequel trilogy, but I think it's going to have to really speak to the events of the prequel and original trilogies in some sort of interesting way. So, I bet there's still quite a few surprises up the sleeves of J.J. Abrams and co. in terms of what they're going to bring forth from those from that older material and give to us.
When I think about it, the way that this release feels different to Episode 3. Episode 3 felt like a bridge rather than a ending, because we knew what happened before it and we knew what happened after it. So it didn't feel like a finish. And obviously with a movie like Episode 9, there is so much we sort of hope to be all tied up, but you're still constrained by a movie length runtime. There's still going to be a certain amount that is probably going to be a little left unsaid to be filled in with the books and the comics. So there's I don't know how much is going to be fully resolved in just one movie.
No, you're quite right, even though we were told at the time of episode 3 that it was the last Star Wars film, and of course that was the intention. It was actually the middle of the 6 films that existed at that point in time. And even in 1983, when Return of the Jedi came out, all the information that came at that point was that we were going to get an ongoing series of Star Wars films. They never eventuated until 1999, and then again once Disney acquired Lucasfilm. But in 1983 we actually believed there would be subsequent Star Wars films following the adventures of, at that time we were led to believe, perhaps some of the main heroes, but certainly R2-D2 and C-3PO. So yeah, this, as you say, this is quite a different trilogy for a couple of different reasons, quite a different conclusion to a trilogy for a couple of different reasons compared to the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy.
It's going to be really interesting to see how on point some of the advertising has been and what has been purposeful misdirection. The trailer that included what appears to be a dark Rey of some sorts, where she's wearing black with a very distinctive red lightsaber. I'm certainly not one to take this at complete face value. I think there are so many different scenarios that are playing here.
Yeah.
We hear the recognizable laughter at the end of the trailers and where that whole story is going to be. And I get the feeling that some of these trailers, they might be like we've seen with other Star Wars films, in that what we've seen in the trailer is actually from like the first third or so of the movie, that there's going to be huge chunks at the end that there's absolutely no footage included in the trailers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of gaps in the information they've given us, because we've seen a lot of focus on the fact that Poe, Finn and Rey are travelling together, that their story arc is going to be closely tied together, but that means we don't know anything about what's happening in the First Order and the First Order characters. That's just been completely avoided in the trailers. So once we assemble those pieces together, I think it's going to be quite a bit more complex, quite a bit more interesting.
I know some fans get really involved and find a lot of enjoyment in the speculation, picking up on threads and trying to guess where the story might go, what elements might be included. Some people go deep diving into the so-called spoiler leaks and things like that, but I think certainly we feel that we're trying not to guess, because we want to go in with no expectations.
No.
We really want to enjoy this film and to not have I wish they had done that, or I thought I had read that this was going to happen. I just want to be surprised and happy.
Yeah. So, having said all that, some of you will be listening to this before the film comes out. A lot of you may be listening to this after the film comes out. So, our conversations are in some ways a little bit moot, but I think a lot of fans will be coming at it from a similar point of view to us in terms of the anticipation and where it's going. And it's significant not just because it's wrapping things up. Things are going to change a little bit from here. We're not expecting another Star Wars film until 2022, and the information we've got from the brief interviews with Kathleen is that may not even be a trilogy. That they're going to reconfigure the way they're presenting the films to us. In the intervening period, of course, we've got the series that are in development and the second season of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. So hopefully they'll space those out well so that they fill the gap up until when we get another film. We are, I believe, going to hear more about the next film in January of next year, i.e. a month away. We're going to hear a little bit more information about the plans, perhaps something about the era that's going to take place and maybe even the people that are directly connected to it. So once you've seen the film, we're going to stick with our usual policies that we do in the SWNZ discussion groups. We want you to be able to have conversations with other fans, but we will be putting in place a spoiler policy on the SWNZ Facebook group so that you don't give away any of the major secrets that I'm sure we're going to encounter to other fans that don't get to see it in the first week. But over on the SWNZ message boards, we are able to set up a spoiler quarantine zone. We're able to do that because message boards don't push stuff into social media feeds, so you will be able to jump in there and have a chat with other Kiwi Star Wars fans as soon as you get as soon as you get home or get out of the theatre or get onto your phone from having watched it in the theatre. So the SWNZ message boards, we will have a spoiler allowed discussion for episode 9 immediately after the release tomorrow night.
I think it's probably a good practice now that the world premiere and red carpet has happened, that there are going to be potential leaks from people who either just jump the gun with excitement or are a little bit of a troll mindset and they want to spoil the surprises. So we're certainly not going to be reading the internet tomorrow morning. We want to be able to go through the day and see it at midnight without getting hit. We certainly don't want to have an incident like being spoiled on the appearance of Baby Yoda, or what happened to Han Solo in The Force Awakens, or anything like that. And I'm sure this movie is going to have moments like that.
So tomorrow's a big Star Wars day for a number of reasons, actually, because the episode 7 of The Mandalorian, the streaming series on Disney Plus, of course, has been brought forward and will actually screen tomorrow night. It's screening early so that in particular Americans can go and see it in advance of episode 9 in the theatres. We will get it in New Zealand just before episode 9 actually opens. It should screen somewhere between 9 and 9:30 in New Zealand. That's when people are tending to see them show up on their various devices that they've got Disney Plus installed on. And we've been told that we should stick around to the after the closing credits of that for some sort of teaser or special taste of episode 9 to just give a little bit of additional hype to that. Now that's going to be quite tight timelines, but it is possible to actually watch that episode of The Mandalorian before you head out to the cinemas for a midnight screening if you want to cram your Star Wars together that tightly. The other aspect that from our point of view, I think that makes it quite a big Star Wars day is that we're coming up on the 8th anniversary of the MMORPG Star Wars The Old Republic, and tomorrow kicks off the Life Day celebrations in-game and a special event highlighting and celebrating the 8th anniversary of Star Wars The Old Republic in-game. So we're going to be a bit tied up tomorrow and probably catching up a little bit on Thursday, but I'm really looking forward to getting into the game and participating into the celebratory events for that 8th anniversary. Eight years is a pretty solid chunk of time that we've dedicated to the game. It's grown a lot in that time. It's really in a good place now, I think, in terms of the content that's coming through. It's a game that we particularly enjoy. So a little bit of a plug for that, and the fact that it is coming up on its 8th anniversary. There's just a vast amount of Star Wars content in that you can enjoy and just immerse yourself in.
We're still playing through the most recent expansion that has some really incredible planet designs and extra content, and I'm really excited by the tease of a new stronghold. There's heaps of new content that we're just really enjoying playing with, just to kind of add, as if we needed more Star Wars to be consumed at this point in time. But it's just fun that we've got TV series, movies, we read the books and the comics, and getting our fill of video games. It's just a really exciting time. There's almost too much to do this week.
Let's move on to a quick chat about the most recent episodes of The Mandalorian. We're going to talk about a few spoilers in here, but the last one screened last Friday, so most of you should have had a chance to see that, we hope. The ones we haven't talked about in the podcast yet are episodes 5 and 6. That is the episode entitled Gunslinger and the one entitled The Prisoner. Dave Filoni directed the Gunslinger, which was the Tatooine-based episode. And more recently we saw the Prisoner, which was I found to be a really interesting episode. There were stark contrasts between those two episodes. One of them was set on Tatooine, the desert planet, had a whole lot of callbacks to in particular original trilogy material, and then we switched over to a tight episode set entirely on space on a travelling first a space station and then a spaceship with quite a visually different environment and quite a different way of telling a story, and quite a lot more characters and character interaction than we've seen to date. I think I enjoyed both these episodes. They were quite standalone, they were quite different. I like both having episodic bottled episodes like that, as well as the longer story arc. I think both of those episodes had some really strong positives about them. I like I'm rambling a little bit here, but I like the Tatooine episode and its callbacks to Mos Eisley from what we know and love of the original trilogy, but strong differences that really told a story about how things have changed since the Empire occupied that area, but has subsequently started to break down in terms of its control over the galaxy. So we see a lot of distinct changes. We see the stormtrooper helmets on pikes. We see a lot less people, and I think that was intentional. The crowds in the Mos Eisley Cantina, I think, were intentionally lightweight. I mean, the fact that we didn't see the droid detector at the door, and in fact that the cantina bar was manned by droids, I think there was an intentional attempt at conveying a distinction between now and then, or earlier Star Wars and current Star Wars, so to speak.
Yeah, because it kind of made me think, like, when we see Luke on Tatooine, this is after the Clone Wars, where droids are the dominant enemy that are causing havoc across the galaxy, to the point where that suspicion of droids is seen and still affects sort of day-to-day life even decades later. But by the time we get to The Mandalorian, that was even further away, so it's now stormtroopers that are sent, because even though Tatooine is seen as a faraway planet on the outer rim, that this empire still had a very strong presence there.
Yeah, you're right. There's a generational effect between who is seen as the bad guys, the bad crew in the galaxy. It was droids, and now it's stormtroopers. That was key. It was a good episode. It wasn't flawless, let's be honest. There was a couple of little bits that I might have changed. I won't nitpick too much. This was one of Dave Filoni's first experiences directing live action material. I really enjoyed seeing Tusken Raiders, Banthas, Dewbacks. I mean, that's something that really speaks to me. I could watch. One of my favourite scenes in the special edition of A New Hope was the scene of the herd of Banthas from a distance. And even back then, the CG back then wasn't great, but I could watch that sort of thing over and over. You could make an episode of just herds of Banthas and Dewbacks, and I'd probably watch and enjoy it. The inclusion of Tusken Raiders was very interesting. Very interesting. They portrayed them not as the savages that we've seen them portrayed as before. They portrayed them as a culture with some degree of civilization that is perhaps just misunderstood because people haven't taken the time to communicate with them. I will admit that the appearance of the Tusken Raiders, the way that scene panned out, was a shade jarring, and might have appreciated that to be done a shade differently. But I think that's just a consequence of the constraints of a TV episode. And then we had the episode last week, last Friday, the heist type breakout of a prisoner from a prison barge, a New Republic prison barge.
This was an episode that had a lot of cameos that some people may not have completely picked up on. I was excited to see Natalia Tena. She was the female Twilight character. She is possibly the most well known for playing Nymphadora Tonks in the Harry Potter series, and she was also in Game of Thrones. But there were a few other little cameos in this that I was particularly excited. For people that may not be familiar, there was a character in there played by the actor Matt Lanter, who is most well known for voicing Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars. So it was quite fun to see a Star Wars alumni that hasn't particularly been seen on screen but has had a significant contribution in the Star Wars television world showing up in there. And of course the three pilots that show up at the end are a really fun cameo to sort of sneak in there. I quite enjoyed that.
Three key directors from the series, yeah. And a cameo that I really enjoyed was Clancy Brown as the Deveronian, because he's actually been involved in Star Wars before. Many of us will know Clancy Brown from way back when in the late 80s when he played the Kurgan in the Highlander movie, but more recently in the animated series Rebels he played Ryder Azadi, so he's a known established Star Wars presence, and I thought it was really cool to see him play the Deveronian, who was a fun and interesting character.
It wasn't too long ago he was a guest on the Star Wars show talking about his role in the animated series Rebels.
Yeah, so a couple of good episodes. Still a lot of material that we haven't seen in The Mandalorian that we have had teased in the trailers and promotional material for that. I would not be surprised if the next two episodes of The Mandalorian that are coming up, have a back-to-back story.
It's interesting seeing the characters that were featured in the promotional lead-up. Particular characters like Cara Dune and IG-11 got featured a little earlier, but we still haven't come across the Imperial characters that were featured on the red carpet.
We don't have long to wait. It's going to be wrapped up by the end of next week. Although, if they are in the final episodes, they may bridge the seasons. Who knows? We don't yet know if season 2 is going to have a time jump or if it's going to be semi-continuous.
We don't know whether a concept show like this was always intended to have a cliffhanger ending, regardless of whether it was going to continue to a second season or not, or whether basically insiders knew that there was going to be a second season, so there's going to be a cliffhanger and leave us hanging. So
in short, is the Baby Yoda story arc going to be wrapped up or left hanging? I think is one way to look at that. So yeah, we find out that by the end of next week. Episode 7 screens tomorrow, Wednesday night in New Zealand. Then we've got a slightly longer than normal wait because episode 7 has been brought forward until episode 8 of The Mandalorian, which returns to its Friday time slot for New Zealanders. Looking forward to that. That's about it in terms of media that we're going to be enjoying over the next couple of days. It is a big day tomorrow and a big few days that we're going to be catching up over the weekend. I'm kind of glad that we're moving into a holiday period where we can redigest a lot of this material and experiences. Spend a bit of time in game in the Old Republic.
And I'm sure we're not going to be the only ones that are all going to want to be seeing The Rise of Skywalker more than once in the cinema. I'm sure that there'll be plenty of us that'll be eager to watch it the moment after midnight, that as soon as we can. But there's something to be said for watching a significant movie like this a second time, to really pick up on details after you've had a sort of a while to absorb everything, and for that sort of shock and everything to kind of simmer, and then you can sort of really sit down and spot the nuances and little details and things like that, and just of course enjoying the movie a whole second time. So we're definitely keen to check it out again, and it's great that it's the holiday season, so we've got time away to be able to do that sort of thing.
So we hope everyone gets the time to go out and see it tomorrow or over the weekend, and jump onto the SWNZ message boards to talk about it straight away. And after about a week, we'll open the SWNZ Facebook discussion group to spoiler allowed content, so you can chat to fans there. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to hit on a couple of store reports that we've reported on the SWNZ website, because they've got a particularly big response. There's been new bedspreads, and whenever I mention bedspreads, duvet covers, so forth, they always are very well received. And a lot of people trying to convince their significant others that they should be on their beds, even though they're perhaps aimed at a younger age group. Anyway, Briscoe's has a new bedspread that comes in a number of sizes, up to from single up to king, and that's currently on sale, so that is worth mentioning. Jump onto the website or the description below, we will have links straight through to that. And the Heavy Infantry Mandalorian action figure 6-inch from the Hasbro's Black Series, it's available at EB Games and Mighty Ape. Mighty Ape has just restocked that, so you can jump on and grab that conveniently from Mighty Ape if you haven't been able to find it at your local EB Games store. Very popular figure, it's been selling like hotcakes. Haven't got one ourselves yet, I'm quite keen to, but we did see it in store the other day at EB Games, and it's a good looking figure. And there haven't actually been many 6-inch figures for the Mandalorian so far. We've actually only got the Mandalorian itself, Cara Dune, IG-11 hasn't shown up locally, and the Off-World Jawa, and now of course the Heavy Mandalorian, who was a briefly seen character, but an instant hit, I think. So that's about it for this week. We'll jump on, and we'll probably put together an SWNZ podcast a little earlier than our usual schedule. We've been moving things around a little bit to fit in around the release of episode 9. We may well be putting together a podcast over the weekend to come out early next week, with a bit of luck by Monday, so stay tuned to the website for an announcement pertaining to that. Other than that, I guess we are done doing talking. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned to the website, SWNZ.co.nz, for Star Wars news for New Zealanders, and to hear about our next weekly podcast episode. Follow our Facebook page and social media, and chat with other fans in the Star Wars New Zealand Facebook group and website forums. Thank you for listening.
May the Force be with you. If you enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and like the video, check out the SWNZ Podcast playlist for our other episodes, and subscribe for alerts about new episodes. See you next time.